today, please make sure to ask myself or Joe or Derek, all of us that are going to be talking today. We're going to go ahead and get started because I know some of you may want to get off of this island for the weekend, and so we'll go ahead and get going. So we just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that create your role as an advisor. And you're going to see a lot of this is going to be working with your officers. So really just working collaboratively with them, getting familiar with the organization's guiding documents. So if you do not have a copy of the Constitution for the organizations that you are working with, you probably want to ask for one. We definitely have those on file. So if you're looking at this going, ooh, I've never actually seen what they're supposed to be doing, we can definitely get you a copy. Hopefully they can also give you a copy, because if they're working without one, that's another problem. But they definitely should be able to have that for you. You definitely want to, if you find any discipline issues, things that the organization is doing, you definitely want to look into those. You want to report those to our office, follow up. If you see something, if you see your group going down the wrong path, you definitely want to kind of follow up on that and talk to them about that and let us know as well. You want to be aware of rules pertaining to student organizations at TAMUG. If you look on the university student rules, there's a whole section that's student organizations. There's also an Appendix 9 that deals with alcohol and student organizations. So it would not be a bad idea to familiarize yourself with those rules, just to kind of help them out and help. Your role is to advise them and to guide them, and so those are going to be important documents for you to know. You want to also be aware of liability issues and work with your organization to help them make reasonable and prudent decisions. So a lot of times the question from student organization advisors is, what is my liability in this? And really, if you are sitting down with your officers as they plan different activities and you are walking them through what the particular risks are with those activities and really talking with them about how are you going to avoid these risks, if you can show that you've taken those steps to kind of try to avoid risks and to have a plan if they come up, then you're probably going to be okay. It's when you walk in going, I don't know what's going on here, and just kind of let them do their own thing, that's when they're going to come back to you. Now, that's not to say that some court, if something goes wrong, it's not to say some court's going to say, oh, we all had a meeting, so we're not going to call you in. You're definitely going to get questions, but if you can show that you have had those conversations, that's going to go a long way. Attend meetings when possible, and you're going to have, different groups are going to have different opinions on this. Some groups, are going to say, we want you at every single meeting. And some groups are going to say, I don't care if you ever show up. My thought is if you can come on occasion or at least meet with your officers fairly regularly to kind of know what they're doing, that's going to be good. I know a lot of people have different schedules and things, personal responsibilities where they can't necessarily be here at 9:30 to 10 o'clock at night when they have their club meeting. So, if you can't be at those meetings, at least make sure you're touching base with those officers and knowing what's going on. And really just making sure that the officers know how to get in touch with you. They know when you're available in your office. If you have certain office hours, make sure they're aware of when you can be found, and just having that contact and making them feel like you can be available. So this is just some interesting things that came out here in the last year or so. They did an alumni survey, and one of the key findings was many respondents indicated they were positively impacted by their participation in extracurricular experiences while enrolled at TAMUG, and when they were asked to identify the one experience that had the greatest impact on them, alumni were most likely to choose belonging to a student organization as one of those things. So I think you guys have a really important role in that. Advisors, you work very closely with student organization officers to get these different activities put together. We also did a survey last year of our students here on campus, and we asked them, are you a member of an organization? Are you an officer of an organization? And these are kind of some differences between just being a member of the organization and being an officer of the organization when it comes to asking them about their skills in different marketable areas. So, you know, working in teams, almost 60% of officers felt like they were advanced or expert at level in those, in working in teams. And so we have working in teams, verbal communication, decision-making, problem-solving, obtaining and processing information, plan, organizing, and prioritizing, is what that says, and influencing others. And so you can see that as officers, they really jump in their level of confidence and competence in that area, in those areas. So I think you guys as advisors have a really great opportunity to influence these students, and they are clearly seeing themselves at a higher level. They can really, with your help, can really achieve some really great things. So those are just some interesting things that we saw over the last year and wanted to share with you. So the big question for advisors, I know we have a lot of new advisors in the room, we have a lot of returning and very seasoned veteran advisors, and so certainly if any of you veterans have advice or something that has helped you along the way, please feel free to share.
That's such a nice way to say it, Shelley. Instead of old. That's nice.
Old people have been here forever.
Thank you.
So, just some things to consider when you're trying to decide how much advising they really need. One thing is going to be the development level of the group. Another thing is kind of what is the university's expectations of you and the organization. So, is advising this organization part of your job function? For many of us in student affairs, that is reality. For a lot of times, faculty, they may not be. Is there a specific program or activity that's tied to that student organization? For example, Yell Leaders. That is a pretty, like that group is very pivotal in having our midnight Yell practices. Or Salt Camp is, you know, they put on a program for incoming freshmen. Also resources allocated. Are they receiving university funds for this activity? So obviously there's going to be higher expectations from the university if they are putting money into that program. Also, you want to think about the students' expectations. What do they want from you as an advisor? We actually have a checklist on our website. If you wanted to go over that, especially if you have a new group that you haven't really had a lot of work with, haven't been working with a lot, just kind of see what they want your role to be. Like I said, sometimes they want you to be at every meeting. Sometimes they could care less if you're there at all. They just want you to be there to kind of bounce ideas off of during the week. So what is their role in the organization? And then also thinking about their perceived level of development. That is not always in line with their actual level of development. So just be aware of that. But sometimes that can cause a conflict when you're advising a group, when you know that they're not quite at a certain level, but they think they are, and trying to find a good, happy place with them so that they don't feel like you're overstepping their bounds. And then also thinking about your advising style. Just what is the appropriate style for the organization and yourself? You don't want to try to be someone you're not. And also, what's the best advising style for helping them develop? Because ultimately that's what we're doing here, is trying to help those students develop and mature and gain all those marketable skills that I talked about on that last slide. So here are the different levels of groups that you might have. So the first group is going to be the infancy level. And these basically, these may be, a lot of times it may be a freshman or sophomore that's starting the organization, and they brought in all their own friends to be the officers. They've never run an organization, they've never really been in an organization, they just knew that they wanted to have this organization on this campus and we didn't have it, so they're going to jump in and do that. So they may have some poor program planning skills. This may not be that they are bad at doing it, they may just not have the knowledge of how to do it. And they may not be terribly committed to the organization. It may be one officer that came in and said, we gotta get this group started. Here, you're my roommate, you're my suite mate, come help me, you're gonna be my officers. And then maybe kind of like, oh, I don't really care about this, but he does, so let's jump in and do this. So you may see an overall lack of responsibility for their actions. In adolescence, they have some basic programming skills and a medium level of commitment, and they just demonstrate some degree of responsibility for their own actions. Young adulthood, I think you can see where we're going with this. So they possess competency in program planning and implementation. They have a high level of commitment to the organization. They are fully responsible for their actions. So do any of you feel like you can pinpoint where your organization is so far? Yeah, okay, so this is making sense. And then finally we have maturity, and these are the students that possess advanced skills in program planning, implementation, and evaluation, and facilitating group decision making. They demonstrate a strong commitment to the goals of the organization and take responsibility for their own actions and the actions of others within their organization. This is where we all hope to eventually be someday. And you may go from a year where you've got this, and then you have a complete leadership changeover, and you may end up right back down at the bottom. And so you have to be ready to jump and change. And really, situational advising, it's all about making sure that you are advising to your group in the situation that they are in. So these are your four possible advising styles. You've got the program director, program teacher, program advisor, and program consultant. So the director works directly with the group to achieve specific tasks. The emphasis is on what is getting accomplished. So just, what do you want to get done this year? Okay, what are the different tasks that have to get done to make sure this happens? And if they aren't doing them, then sometimes you have to step up and help them out and jump in and do those things. Hopefully, we don't have a whole lot of program directors. Program teacher. The advisor continues to focus on the product, turns over the more basic programming responsibilities to the students, and begins to equally emphasize how things are accomplished and who is involved as well as what is accomplished. So you're moving up a little bit, you're kind of letting them take the reins a little bit, doing some of those things. Your program advisor places less emphasis on the product and more on group decision-making, dynamics, evaluation, the how and why, like the process of the organization. So they are deciding what they're doing and they are getting it done, but you're helping them through that process of how and why they do it, the way they do it. And then finally, our program consultant is available to provide information, historical perspective, does not become consistently involved in the day-to-day operations of the organization. So, like I said, you're going to be considering what are the university's expectations, what are the students' expectations, what is their development level, what is your, and so that kind of helps you decide what your advisor style and what your role is. So in quadrant 1, university expects the advisor to produce programs, and the students may be at an infancy level. So there's a high expectation that the program is done. But your students may not be all on board and doing it. So that's where you may be the program director. And so you are essentially going to take the role of a group member. You're going to be helping them make decisions like an organization member. You're going to be taking on tasks and helping them get things done. In quadrant 2, your university expectations may be that the advisor is to produce programs, some recognition of student committee structure. The students are potentially at the adolescent stage of development. So this is where you'll be kind of a teacher/director. And this is your role in this quadrant is going to be kind of as an advocate. You're an authority, so they're going to come to you and make sure that you're okay with the things that they're doing before they do them. You're kind of an expert, so they're going to basically they're going to be doing things, and you're coming to you to make sure that is this okay? Are we doing this right? And I know a lot of us work in this quadrant pretty frequently, actually. Quadrant 3, the university expects the students to produce the programs. Students are in a young adulthood stage of development. Your advising style would be the advisor/teacher. And so your role is going to be kind of an educator, an evaluator, a resource, helping them get the process done. I know a lot of us work in this stage as well. So, I think I feel like maybe Check and Crew would be a good example of this. The students are putting on this program. And I think, they're fairly high level. They're doing a good job. And so you're kind of the one that's teaching them, the skills, like helping them develop those skills. You're evaluating things that they do and saying, okay, how can we do this better next time? It's not him saying, this is what we should have done different. It's helping them walk through that process and talk about it, and helping them create, how to improve that process, and then being a resource, like, how do we do this? We need this to happen. So they know what they want to do, and they're just kind of using Alex as a resource. And then finally, quadrant 4, the university expects the students to maintain the organization. The students are in the maturity stage of development. You would be working as a program consultant. So your advising role would be as a reflector, a fact finder. They come to you and ask, okay, we need this or that, or what do you think about this? They're not really, they don't need your help with a lot of things. They know how to get things done on campus and how to make things happen, and their processes are good. And, so that's kind of where you are in that quadrant. But just some key points to take from that. You want to make sure you're matching your advising style to the group's level. Obviously, a brand new group coming in is not going to be very successful if all they're doing is coming in and saying, okay, this is what we're doing, and checking out. Now, they may be a fairly low-rate organization. They may not have a lot of intensive programming that they do. It may be something where they're just kind of getting together as a recreational organization and doing their thing, and it's more of a social group than anything else, and that you may be fine with that. The level of the group development may vary according to the situation, so be prepared to adapt your style. So sometimes we'll have a group that's they're just going along, chugging along, doing real good, doing their own little things, and then all of a sudden someone comes up with this grand idea, and they're going to have a community-wide event, and they're going to bring people from all over Galveston and have this huge event, and that's when you're going to go, whoa, you're not just having game night, now we got to talk, so just be ready for having to make that switch on a note.
Or they're going to build a cannon.
Or they're going to build a cannon, Everybody's got their example, so. And then you can help influence that group's development through changing your style. So, make sure, kind of a piece that we learned in grad school, all of us that are in student affairs, is kind of a challenge and support model. So you want to challenge them while still supporting them, making sure that, that you're pushing them a little bit so that they are developing, but you're there to catch them, and so it doesn't become a complete disaster and then we lose all confidence. So, and then gain support for adapting your style of advisement through communication and negotiation, and seek to develop skills which will allow you to perform effectively in all 4 advising styles. So all of us can do all of those different styles, but obviously there are going to be certain ones that are going to be more natural to us than others.
Like that, one thing, a lot of it with the advising too is that a lot of times students are really focused on the here and now, and a lot of times your role as an advisor is going to be that continuity. That we're done with this event, and your role as the advisor is, all right, well, let's do the after action report, and they're kind of like, well, why, we're done with it, and you're really trying to help them to develop it so this works year after year after year. So developing those very detailed reports as to how they did things, so that the next year it'll be useful next year. And by doing that, that also helps you increase the maturity of the group, because next year they're going to be operating off of documents and really trying to mature as they learn from the predecessors instead of just always being directed from you. So a lot of times your role as advisor is really looking at those transitional issues on, okay, now you're going to do elections. Are you doing your elections early enough where maybe they can shadow your leaders and learn something there, and you'll become very self-sustaining that way. So that's another way where you can help move your group through that maturity level.
And you are the one constant.
Yes.
So, I've seen, I've been salt camp advisor 17 years or something, and I really have seen a big difference in the level of the organization, because couple weeks ago. And it's really just, it's been really interesting that, now I've got for 4 director positions, we had 9 people applying, and this is not an easy job. I mean, they're applying for a job, truly a job that doesn't pay. It is a non-paying job, so, and they work very hard for an entire year to do it. But we've got people who, they can see the benefits of it, and the part of your role is really helping them see what are they gaining from being an officer of these organizations. So hopefully that is helpful. I think at this point, we want to make sure that you guys are aware of the risk management session that it's state required that we give this session to all of our student leaders as well. And then those student leaders are taking that to their members. And then we also have to give that presentation to you guys as advisors. So Joe is going to take that on.
What if we set with our students? Am I not allowed to clear my throat? I just... Let me clear my throat. What are these? Just management advisor examples. I was the one, Alex.
Did you guys get the sign-in sheet? Yes.
Joe, are your rap videos in here? Or? The number of times I did that.
Like Monday night.
I think like 2 days ago maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any big plans this weekend? Oh yeah?
I'm interrupting him. So I'm going to do my very best to do the homework for the class that I'm in. But
I know.
Danny, I'm like working on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scary.
I'm doing the best I can. I just didn't want you to like blow it off. Because
That was kind of sweet.
I'm still trying to catch up from the last thing.
So it's like, it's pretty
Okay.
This is a 2-hour presentation that I give to our students. Much condensed for you guys, luckily. Yeah, it usually takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get through this with the students. So we try to make sure we're doing a thorough job, and this is, obviously one of the more important areas. Learning all the nuts and bolts of, how to actually do all the different wheelhouse stuff is great, but at the end of the day, this is kind of what trips a lot of our groups up, even when they're submitting events or just kind of in their day-to-day activities. So, really and truly, the end goal of this presentation is just to kind of give them kind of some bare bones. What is risk management? What do we mean when we say that? How do they go about actually doing risk management by using a risk matrix? So we explain what the risk matrix is. And then we kind of talk through a lot of different possible scenarios. Usually handout, I've now gone to 3 different scenarios that I'll give them in terms of different events that they may be putting on. They're all based on things that we've done here, it's like Spring Fest or Fall Fest type of an event, and then I think we have like a group that's traveling over 25 miles. So, you know, common activities that we see a lot of our groups doing. So now everybody's super excited. I put the pictures in. I mean, you guys may enjoy them as well, but they're mostly for the students. So, try to do something to keep them a little bit more entertained during this presentation. So, but yeah, I mean, basically, like I said, we talked to them a little bit about risk management. So it's, you know, just telling them, hey, this is basically trying to identify what types of behaviors or risks are inherent within the different activities that you're doing, and then taking steps to mitigate those. We cover all these different topics for them, so kind of our, you know, most risky types of behaviors and things. Explain to them that, you know, the first thing that everybody thinks about when you say risk management is always the physical aspect of risks, and so I really try to kind of explain to them that there are at least 4 other types, and, you know, a lot of times they can kind of bleed or, you know, blend themselves into other types of risks. So if something may initially be a physical risk, and especially if it like actually manifests itself as a physical injury or something like that, that may ultimately, you know, have an effect on your reputation. You may have, as a result, maybe you damaged facilities, or maybe the facilities caused that physical injury. There might be financial repercussions as a result of a physical type of risk. So, I mean, they all kind of intertwine and work together a lot of times depending on what's going on, and so we kind of talk through that and help them better understand that aspect. And then, you know, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you know, the other thing is, like, I try not to get them too worked up about, like, thinking of every little thing that could possibly ever go wrong for their event. That's not really the goal. You can see in the second one, you also want them to assess what's the probability of that happening, okay? So I don't want to see something, you know, when they turn in their event form, it says there's a possibility of a Sharknado going on, because that's not really realistic. So, you know, or planning, you know, like, it may be realistic to plan for a hurricane in this environment, but if they're traveling all the way up to Wisconsin, probably not really a realistic, you know, risk. So, kind of knowing where they're going, what they're doing, and then assessing the probability of it actually occurring. And, you know, obviously we want to identify controls and ways to mitigate those risks. The more likely they are to occur, and the more likely they are to inflict, you know, grave danger or bodily injury or, you know, whatever it may be. So here's kind of an example of a risk matrix. We essentially, for those of you that have, I think most of you have probably done this before and you've seen within Wheelhouse, I also printed off some examples for you. That's what you got, your handout is. So those bolded sections are basically what we asked them, and so they somewhat match up with our things here. So basically, we asked them to list all the activities that are associated with your event. Then we asked them, okay, what are the different risks? We even put in parentheses. Think of all all 5 types, because otherwise they tend to forget some of those. And then, you know, we basically teach them through this training and say, okay, well, you need to evaluate the seriousness and the probability. We're not going to actually ask you to document, you know, how you went about determining that, but then we are going to ask you to document how you go about having those methods that you're going to manage the risks. I also talk about with them in terms of a lot of our groups, I would say, tend to be very good in their proactive or forward-thinking skills when it comes to risk management. So they'll say, okay, well, we're going to do X, Y, and Z in order to prevent something from happening. Like, that's great. Okay, that's a good start. Where a lot of times we see them kind of stumble a little bit is on their reactive risk management plan. What's going to happen? What are you going to do if you did X, Y, and Z to prevent something to happen, but it still happens anyway? Because that's why it's called an accident. It's not an accident because you planned for it to happen. It's an accident because, oh shoot, it accidentally happened. So a lot of times they tend to not necessarily think of the more reactive steps in order to manage risk, and so we talk through some of that in terms of for example, on one of these, the middle one, they're going to say everybody's going to be able to swim. Okay, well, it doesn't really say how you're going to ensure that, but I guess if you ask them that, well, what happens if they went and had a fajita lunch, and then they went out there and they cramped up, and now suddenly they know how to swim, but now they're kind of incapacitated to swim. So one of these things, in this middle section would, well, maybe you should have a lifeguard, right? I mean, we're going to require that anyway because it's the pool, but that would be one of our suggestions, and having them actually think about that and say, like, we're going to have a lifeguard just in case. Somebody pulls a muscle, anything. I mean, what if they fell out of the boat, hit their head? Well, they knew how to swim, now they can't. So just kind of being proactive and thinking about things like that. So just kind of going through this whole, or not going through the whole thing, but the handout, the first two, if you kind of read through those are ones that I kind of picked out, and not trying to pick on anybody's particular group. I didn't attach any names, although you can probably make assumptions based on the activities of who they might be. But just trying to find some examples of ones where people submitted them and were like, not quite hitting the mark that we'd like to see here. And so, for the first one, we could definitely do a better job of maybe outlining a little bit more about the actual physical injuries instead of just kind of lumping it all in and saying there's any kind of physical injury, like what are we talking about? So if we're playing soccer, we're talking muscle strains or, ligament sprain, maybe broken bones, that kind of stuff. And then, and also there may be facility risks, right? I mean, what if you're, depending on what field you're on, there could be holes or divots or all sorts of different things that could be on that particular facility, depending on where you are. So, and methods to mitigate, keeping